What is going on? Welcome back to the channel. Yes, it has been a while, but look, the season is getting itself underway. We have seen today the Community Shield have its outcome. You know, that's obviously the beginning, really, for me, of the Premier League of the football season. We've seen the EFL get their campaigns underway as well, and we are 1 week away from Chelsea returning to action in the Premier League. But it's not without drama. Of course it isn't. And we're going to get into it a little bit more here on the channel and what we hope to be a far more regular live stream sort of setup coming for the following season, I should say. It's good to see some of you guys in here as well that we saw last season. Lots to talk about, obviously, as well. And there's rumours of a massive, massive deal happening at Chelsea. And there is rumours of a mass clear out as being reported by quite a few journalists as well. So we need to get into that because there's a lot of names on the list to discuss. So starting off with the pretty much breaking news, if I'm being honest with you, is Reece James. Yet again, we are questioning whether or not Reece James is going to be able to stay fit with his reoccurring hamstring issues. We saw him go off to surgery. We saw him return just before the season ends. We saw him have a bit of a break and a return to the action in pre-season in a slightly different role. And already, a day before we're due to play Inter Milan at Stamford Bridge, the captain is injured. It's another hamstring issue, which we thought we'd sort of see the end of after the operation. It doesn't look like that's going to be the case, which is a real shame because I'm sure there isn't anyone more frustrated than Reece James himself, because it's all Reece wants is to be on the pitch. I can assure you of that. And he wants nothing more than to fulfill his duty of being Chelsea captain. And right now, he just isn't getting the opportunity to do that as much as I'm sure he wants to. And it's frustrating. Look, I know Dan in the comments is saying that Reece James is suspended, or Dan James. But yeah, look, Reece James is suspended for the first couple of games in the season. But the issue for me isn't to do with the suspension. I'm well aware he got himself sent off. It's more the fact that I didn't want to see Reece James injury reports this season this early on. We've not even kicked a competitive football yet. And already we're talking about Reece James injuries. It's the worst possible start for me for Reece going into this season. It's same old when we felt like we were in a position that it shouldn't be an issue. Maybe it's just the niggle. Maybe it's just precaution. And he's being wise here. When before, potentially, he might have had that issue and it's caused him to miss more games. He's sort of saying, look, is there any point in me playing it? Do I need another month of fitness? Looking at him, he doesn't look as sharp as I've seen him before. I think the return to action at the end of last season, he looked in better condition than he probably does now. And that's not to say that I've heard some people saying that he looks overweight. I just think on the pitch, he doesn't probably look as dynamic as he has done in quite a recent time. I felt like that Nottingham Forest game for me stood out, that he had bags of energy to bomb up and down the touchline, albeit for a short period of time. But I don't even think I've seen him do that in pre-season. Yes, there's a role change, quite obviously, but even Reece James himself, I'm sure is probably monitoring and wondering how much he can trust those hamstrings that he's had issues with before, and already potential injury. So yeah, not what we want to see with Reece James. If you're in here, what I will say is make sure to smash a like on the video. If we can get 15 likes for a return to the lives, that would be unreal. No news yet of how long Reece is going to be out for. Look, we've got players to cover. We've signed a lot of players again. Gusto obviously is more than capable of playing on that right-hand side. We're yet to see Cucurella return. We know he's back at Cobham, but we're yet to see him sort of play any minutes in pre-season because of how well and how far he managed to go into the Euros. So, look, it's going to be interesting, that first team that we see Maresca put out against City, but I'm sure we'll get a little bit more of an idea against Inter Milan tomorrow, as I'm sure most Chelsea fans are excited for. So yeah, no real news on how long he's going to be out. Apparently, it's minor. It's being treated as a minor setback. But we all know we're without Reece James until after the international break anyway. So in terms of when we're going to see Reece in a competitive game, it might not change it too much. But it is an injury, and it is a worrying injury because it's the same sort of area of Reece James's hamstring that we're questioning again, aren't we? After an operation, which is exactly what we didn't want to do. But this looks like it's going to be the future for Reece James and his career. Moving on, there is news of a huge potential signing at Chelsea Football Club. Yes, we all heard the news yesterday that Pedro Neto could be on his way to Stamford Bridge. And I'm absolutely certain, by the way, this spells the end for one of three wingers. I think we're going to see the end of Madueke, Mudryk, or Sterling. One of them, for me, will more than likely leave before the end of the transfer window because one of those players isn't going to be happy with a reduction in playing time, which they may well see with the arrival of Pedro Neto. And even if they don't see a reduction in playing time because of his injuries, in terms of a pecking order and where they fit into the squad, that's where I think there could be issues arising for some of those players and how they feel about where they stand in the club. So let's talk a little bit, shall we, about Pedro Neto, because there's a lot of people sort of getting on Chelsea's back here saying, how on earth is this possible? How can they spend more money? Is this a good deal? Is it quite simply Chelsea being held to pay an extortionate fee for a player? Well, for me, I don't think it's the case. I think Pedro Neto looks like a fantastic player. He started last season unbelievably well. But there is a overriding sort of precautionary take from most Chelsea fans, and it's this that Dan Knight's making up right now. My worry on Neto, he's injury prone as well. Yes, when you look at the record, it makes for horrific viewing. He's missing on average 20 games a season over the last 3 or 4 seasons. That absolutely isn't ideal. He's a fantastic player. We all saw that last year, that actually his game might have been elevated to an even higher level than it already was. He was for a while the Premier League's top assist maker. He ended up finishing with a very respectable 10 Premier League assists. His goal scoring isn't unbelievable. It's more that it's in moments. I think in 100 Premier League games, there's 11 goals. Yes, at times, those minutes have been very, very limited in those games. But there's other points when he's been able to put quite a run together. And we've seen what sort of player he can be. And it's exceptional. It's a tricky winger that can play on both sides. We know that as Chelsea fans, we've seen him score against us at the Bridge. He's capable of covering in a more advanced role, as we've seen Eden Hazard do in the past at Chelsea as well. He's done it at Wolves. He's played as their furthest forward player. I'm not saying he's a striker, by the way. I'm just saying he's capable, and he shows that he's fluid enough and has the understanding to play in many different roles across the front three. I think predominantly we're seeing this as a player to come in on the left-hand side, but being left-footed, he can be inverted and play off the right as well. And because we're not sure yet of which fullback Enzo's going to invert at Chelsea, a player like Pedro Neto really gives you the option to decide to go either way. Because if you want to play an inverted winger on one side, you can use him. And if you want to play a winger on the left who's capable of playing and holding that width, Pedro Neto can do that as well. So really, really exciting for me. I don't want to overhype it. I don't want to say that this is going to change our fortunes. But for me, this is the type of deal that I want to see Chelsea make. This is the type of signing that I've been calling out for from Clear Lake and the board all season, since the season finished. If we're going to sack Poch when he had an upturn in results and bring in a manager that we're going to call inexperienced, you have to give that manager the best tools to succeed. And for 15 to 20 Premier League games, I believe Pedro Neto is capable of being that. there's a really, really good point here. Neil Gunner saying, can your medical team keep this guy fit? And I think for me, this is going to be the biggest problem. Chelsea's medical team does not have the best record when it comes to keeping players fit and stopping reoccurring injuries. Last year, we saw Pedro Neto have 2 hamstring injuries, 1 on each leg. We've already seen Reece having issues with his hamstring again. For me, the biggest positives this season for Chelsea going in to this season in terms of injuries is the change and the difference in the style of football. There will be times when Chelsea will have way more possession of the ball, and hopefully it's this reduction of constant running in training where we definitely saw an increase of injuries last year reduce down a little bit. But don't forget, before Poch, we still had injury problems. And on the whole, I believe Chelsea have a really bad issue with injury-prone players in their squad. I think Reece has got an issue. Chilwell's got an issue. Wesley Fofana quite clearly has an issue. Pedro Neto quite clearly has an issue at Wolves. Do they rely on him too much? Yes, but to miss 20 games a season, that suggests to me that there's probably an issue there with another player incoming. We've seen Madueke have injuries before coming to Chelsea, albeit he seems to have been able to put those aside, which is a good sign. We've seen a few players struggle with injuries at Chelsea over the last few years, and I think there's a mixture of tactics and the ask of what those players had to do under the coach. I think there's been an issue with the medical team, hence the reason we've seen the removal of some medical staff. Yet, look as well, Nkunku and Lavia are also players that have struggled with injuries. They've not had nearly enough minutes for the fee that they cost. So it's a real issue. We obviously saw Enzo Fernandez pick up a hernia issue as well last season and miss a sizable chunk towards the end of the season. So Chelsea's squad isn't without injury issues. Even Sanchez got injured last season, which saw him lose his place to Petrovic. So for me, it's an issue that has to be addressed going into this season. Chelsea's medical staff have to do better. We had way too many injuries way too often last year, and it didn't help Poch. You know, every single game for a period of time, he didn't have the same players available for selection. It was always 1 or 2 dropping out. Cucurella obviously missed a sizable chunk as well. Gusto's missed games with injuries. We barely saw players compete for the same position last season for a long, long time. It wasn't until right towards the end that we saw players being able to compete for positions on the pitch, which obviously upped the standard of performances. Hence, one of the reasons we managed to climb up the table. So, yeah, look, Strictly Sports says, like the video. Guys, if we can get up to 15 likes on this video for the return of lives on the channel, that would be great. That's kind of where I'm looking at. I'd love more, but if you're new, make sure to subscribe. There's more and more content coming this season. And make sure to drop a like on the video if you're enjoying it. Pedro Neto looks increasingly likely to Chelsea. And I think this is perfect. This is the type of deal I want to see. I know we just touched on the injury side of things, but as a player, this is what I want to see quality-wise coming into Chelsea's squad. I think he adds something. I think he is better than what is already in the squad. I always think if you're going to go out and spend money on a player, they probably need to be improving what you already have. And for me, so many times under Clearlake, we've seen them recruit players that probably aren't better than what we already have. They're either of a similar level with the potential to improve or to be a hit and sell on, or they seem like a good deal to be had. You know, someone like Tosin comes in. I don't think he's a level above any of the defenders in the team, but on a free with Premier League experience at that age and a team without much Premier League experience, it's not a bad deal. Dewsbury Hall probably represented quite good value in the market at 30 odd million. This one, Pedro Neto, is on the opposite end of the scale. This is bringing in one of the most highly regarded wingers in the Premier League on his day. 10 assists in the Premier League for Wolves is exceptional. Considering how many minutes he's played, his output last season was fantastic. But this is the point I want to get to. Who's losing out? Because fit Neto starts over all your wingers. And I do not disagree. The only one I'll say is if Cole Palmer is playing as a right winger next season, I don't think Neto starts over him. But over Sterling, Madueke, over Mudryk, over Tyreek George, who's had a few minutes, over even Nkunku playing out on the wing, I think Pedro Neto gets in above all of these. And for me, the person that I think should be missing out is probably Mudryk, because I think if you look over the last few seasons, Mudryk has quite clearly been the one that has been the furthest below par. There's been times when Raheem Sterling's looked good, yeah, albeit there's been a lot and probably too many times he's looked woeful as well. There's been times when we've seen Madueke being really, really good. He's had a really positive preseason. I'd almost go as far to say that Raheem Sterling's had a really good preseason as well. Mudryk, on the other hand, I'm not sure about. And I would say if anyone's really concerned about losing game time, it's Mudryk for me. However, and this is really important to remember, there probably isn't value in Mudryk at the moment to get a move to somewhere else. The board probably can't generate a sizable transfer fee, probably because of the lack of what he's achieved. Raheem Sterling, on the other hand, a player that probably at 29 still wants to be starting every single game. There's a New England manager coming in. So is his career going to be revitalized under a New England manager if he can put some consistent performances together? If he can get a move somewhere else? I think we might see the departure of Raheem Sterling before the end of the summer. I really do. Now, I don't know where it'll be, but he's on such phenomenally sized wages at Chelsea under the new structure. I think with how we've kind of moved towards this new wage structure, Raheem Sterling's going to be the guy that might depart. I believe we could probably generate a fee in and around 30 million for him. I don't know where or who would be a target for Raheem Sterling, but realistically, I think that might be a player that could be looking to move if he feels his position's under threat and he feels that he can go and live in a country that offers him a competitive league still, offers him a competitive wage. Oh, look, let's be honest, it's not going to be as high as what he's on right now at Chelsea, but it could definitely be a club like Juventus or somewhere like that in Italy. I think there's murmurs that Juventus could be one of those clubs. I don't personally see Raheem Sterling moving to Saudi Arabia. I think he wants to stay in and around Champions League football. He's still only 29. Yes, he quite obviously hasn't fitted in to Chelsea's environment currently. You can tell he's not incredibly happy. I don't think the style of football's really suited him all that well. I would say that actually the perfect style of football for Raheem Sterling is just arriving at Chelsea. He's been played in his perfect position under Maresca. But I think actually he might feel that Pedro Neto could potentially be a threat to his position. And Mudryk, on the other hand, knows full well that he's kind of still a backup. And I don't see him going anywhere. The only way I see Mudryk go is to go out on loan. But Mudryk's contract is set up to be right for the new regime and the new wage structure at Chelsea. Sterling's isn't. If you could shift Lukaku and Sterling off the wage bill, that's 350 grand a week each. That's 700 grand a week. You're looking at I'm just working this out, 3 million a month off of the wage bills. That's an absolutely insane amount of money every year off of the wage bills, 30 to 40 million off of a 400 million pound wage budget that we've got at the moment, or wage outgoing. It's a huge amount. It's 10% if you can shift those two. And I genuinely think that would be the look. I would think that the board, by signing Pedro Neto, believe they have an exit plan for Raheem Sterling. I really do. Mudryk is rumoured to be on around 70 to 100 in that sort of bracket in terms of wages. The board are going to see that as way more affordable. They're going to see that as a player that if he ever improves, they can definitely sell him on because his wages won't ever be an issue. Look, all right, they paid over the top for Mudryk. They definitely did. He's not got to the height or the level that we were expecting him to after that debut that he made against Liverpool. And there's been real issues there. But you just never know with Mudryk. There's so much raw ability there that one day, if it all clicks, we all know there's a fantastic player. But right now, Pedro Neto is going to be more than likely coming in, and we'll be seeing probably the departure of one of our left-sided wingers However, if Madueke sees Pedro Neto start ahead of him on the right-hand side on that inverted role, Madueke will be gone ASAP. ASAP. I think Madueke's probably waiting to see whether or not Pedro Neto is going to be favoured on the left or the right. And I think if there's even a sniff that Pedro Neto would be played on the right, Madueke, we've seen it before, he will not like that. And I think he'll be wanting to leave. Neil Gunner's saying here, how long's the contract? I actually don't know how much longer Sterling's got. My guess would be 2 years. I don't think he was one of those that signed on an exceptionally long deal, but I think probably at the age and the year that he came, coming in, don't forget, Sterling was probably Clearlake's first real marquee signing. It was a good fee, about 45 million, a massive name coming in at what should have been the peak of his career. We've really seen him fail and struggle to perform at Chelsea to the level that Raheem Sterling's done in his career before as well. So for me, that's the player I'd be keeping an eye on. I think he's the one where we could generate a bit of a fee still because of the name. And I do believe there are clubs in other leagues that will see the potential in him. We've definitely seen the Italian league take a liking to some of these players that have been deemed sellable by Chelsea. And talking about that, we need to get into this debate about potential mass outings at Chelsea, because there's rumours that there's quite a few players that potentially could be on their way out of Chelsea coming into, I say, the season's beginning, but also the sort of penultimate stages of the transfer window. And some of these players are players that we've only just signed, and there's already rumours they could be on the way out. I'm seeing news that Omarodian could already be available for loan should he, Dan Knight just saying here, 3 years Sterling has left on his contract. And I think that's probably a time where he needs to decide. So just quickly on that, Sterling, 3 years left. Sterling needs to decide what his career is going to look like for his last few years of being capable of performing at the top level. He's 29. He's probably got 2 to 3 seasons left where he could be a viable asset for a team in the Premier League looking to compete for a European place, like he is at Chelsea. Does he stay for 3 years, or does he move to somewhere like Italy, get a second chance again in a slower pace league, and really try to squeeze every last drop out of it? But if we go on to the players that could potentially be leaving, we're seeing that Omarodian could potentially be leaving on loan before he's even arrived. I'm seeing that he's one of the players that the board would be open to loaning out to see instant progress, potentially a quick flip. If he goes and has another season where he scores 9 to 15 goals, somewhere in that range that he's already achieved at Alaves, could he be worth double? Could he be worth £10 million more than what he's been bought in for? Be another quick flip? We're kind of seeing that with Datro Fofana, who's another striker that's been bought in and is more than likely going to be sold for potential profit. At Chelsea, never really going to see the likes of the first team dressing room and being given that fair chance that someone might believe he deserves. But we've seen him do quite well at Burnley last year, and we've seen him do a job for that lower level Premier League team or out in Germany. I think he's had a loan spell out there as well. It's a weird one, isn't it? People are saying Samu's a waste of money, but if Samu puts 10, 15 million pound profit on the book in the next 3 years, is it a waste of money? Probably not. It's the issue for me is if you're going to go and spend 30 million on Samu and you're going to spend 20 million somewhere else and 20 million somewhere else for a young Brazilian, the issue I have there, like Washington and Santos and Gabriel that we've already bought and we're buying more, and Gabriel Mack and potentially like 6 other goalies that we've signed. That money could have been used to give Conor Gallagher a better wage packet, to give him a potential chance of being able to stay at Chelsea instead of clearing out. And for me, look, I'm not going to sit here and say that Conor Gallagher should have been the star and the captain of Chelsea going forward, but I do think Conor Gallagher added value to the squad in ways that I don't think many of the other players add value to this Chelsea squad. He knew what it was to be Chelsea. He connected with the fans. You knew every single game you're getting 110% from Conor Gallagher, and you knew you could rely on him if you ask him to do something. I'm not saying he was going to win Chelsea games. I'm not saying he's a match winner. I'm not saying Conor Gallagher is this exceptional player that I think some people are wrongly putting him on that pedestal. I think, yes, he was far more instrumental to how Pochettino would play football than Maresca, but I still think that's the type of player that I don't want to see Chelsea letting go so easily when they're happy to waste 30 million on Samu for a quick flip, or Datro Fofana or Washington or all those players. And that's probably the issue I have with buying these players for smaller amounts of money and the quantity that we're doing it in. To be sat here now, a week away from the season starting, less than a month till the transfer window closes, with a 40-plus man squad. I don't even know if that's 40-plus playing squad, is absolutely ridiculous. There is no other club in, I'm going to say, in world football with the same situation as Chelsea right now. And what's the idea? Let Maresca oversee 40 players, or potentially give another coach like a squad of 20 to play behind closed doors games and wiggle room in terms of who can step up to the first team. There's absolutely no way I see Maresca working with more than 25, 26 players at a real push. If he is happy to work with 40 players, I would be shocked. I think that's the issue. Do the board want to see what's available in terms of our playing squad? Who's likely going to stay? Yeah, we'll probably see a clear out. If that's reduced to like 35 by the time the season starts, I wouldn't actually be surprised. And if they could knock down another 5 by the end of the transfer window, a 30-man squad is still ridiculously big. But with Chelsea's injury record, a 30-man squad might be what we need. Otherwise, we're going to see the likes of youngsters coming through like we did last year with like Alfie Gilchrist and players like that. But then the board don't mind because Alfie becomes a sellable asset. And it's just this weird, unique way of doing things that this new Chelsea board have in mind, which we're all struggling to understand, whether you support Chelsea or not. And it's a real issue. And Neil Gunner's asking the question here, how do you expect Maresca to manage a 40-man squad? You forgot what you've done to Potter. And I really don't disagree, by the way. Big up HR as well. Loving the Neto icon there as well. I'm sure there are plenty of people excited to see what Pedro Neto offers this coming season if he is in fact going to move to Chelsea. I go back to this point. Maybe the board aren't learning from their mistakes, or they want a manager to come in and go, yeah, we don't mind. We don't mind if you give me 40 players. It's a huge talent pool to choose from. But like we saw with Potter, he had far too much going on in his mind. He had way too many players. But there were times last season when Chelsea had more than 10 players injured. So if your 30-man squad reduces down to 20, it's okay, isn't it? In terms of managing that amount of players. Or if your 35-man squad reduces down to 25 because of injuries and whatever, then yeah, we're gonna see the usefulness of having a really deep squad. Like we're all saying, though, if there's no injuries and we get knocked out of cup competitions and we don't play that many games next season, if we fail to qualify for the Conference League, this squad's way too bloated. Way too bloated. I think 30 is an absolute limit that a squad should ever get to for me. And that should be a desperate moment that you start going, we need to clear out players in this squad. 40 plus, which where Chelsea are at right now, I'm hearing, and I'm not sure with all the murmurings going on, but we're up to getting close to 45. It's ridiculous. It's almost like the board want to have 2 25-man squads to deal with. And don't get me wrong, people need to remember Chelsea had a loan army a few years ago of like 40 players. But there are new loan deals and structures in place now that you can't loan out 40 players a season. I think we've got 2 international loan deal slots left. And then the players have to be loaned out to other leagues. And even then, there's new restrictions in place. So I just wonder where or how and what our squad is going to look like. Only time will tell. I'm sure we're going to start seeing departures. We know that Broja is up for sale. We know that Trevor Chalobah is up for sale. They've been banished from the first team dressing room and area at Cobham, which I don't even want to get into that because I think that is absolutely wrong, and that's all I'll say on that. There is a limit, as Indigo Jedi says. Surely there's a limit of players we can register for the league and cup competitions. All 40 players are not going to be legible. There are ways round it, but yes, I think there is a limit. But some players under a certain age don't have to be registered. Because of their age, they're allowed to play whether they're registered or not. Crazy, I know. And Chelsea are doing a very good job of finding loopholes in the Premier League's rules and regulations that the Premier League will go, oh, we didn't know that could be exploited in that way. We need to change it. Chelsea are doing a fantastic job. They're literally finding loopholes left, right, and centre that other teams didn't do and didn't need to do. And I was listening to something a little bit earlier, just talking about finances and these guys who are running Chelsea right now, and they are huge risk takers. Apparently, I was listening to the owner of Peterborough United. He was saying that these guys, wherever they've gone in business, it's been a rough couple of years that people are not sure of how it's going to look and what's going to happen. And then out of nowhere, once they've got their plan in place and everything starts to click, the businesses have absolutely exploded. And you've seen monumental change. Hence the reason these guys have been able to generate the kind of money that they have in their careers. That's why they're billionaires, not just millionaires. They're billionaires, and they take huge risks. But so far, it's paid off. Right. And they're taking a risk here. They're doing things completely differently to what we've seen other clubs do forever in football. And if it pays off, they will look like geniuses. However, if it doesn't, the downfall and the monumental fuck up that would have been carried out at Chelsea Football Club, for me, will take years and years and years to recover from. But I believe they know that they're going to spread this huge amount of players that they're buying over 2 or 3 different clubs. You will start to see transfers to Strasbourg for cheaper amounts. Move that player over to Strasbourg. Move that player over to a team we buy in Portugal. Move that player over to a team we buy in South America. And then that 50-man playing squad that they've assembled at their main club, Chelsea, will be diluted down across 3 or 4 other clubs in the multi-club ownership model. And then in a few years' time, when the Premier League starts to get new TV deals in the States, because they believe they're going to be able to grow the game over there massively because of the Club World Cup and the World Cup being held in the States, then they believe that they would have purchased Chelsea for 3 billion. Then they'll have this huge multi-club model of 4 different clubs with all these assets, all these players that are thriving. They're going to have tripled, maybe even quadrupled the amount of money that they've spent. Say they've given themselves a budget of 5 billion. They could have a multi-club model that is sellable for like double, triple, quadruple. Like I said, they could be talking huge amounts of money. And if you think about it, if you look at Manchester City, they've got Troyes, they've got Girona doing well. They've got a team, I think, in potentially like or New York, obviously. Maybe they've got one in South America as well. I'm not 100% sure. But they've got their talent now spread across 5 different teams. And I'm absolutely certain that is what Chelsea are trying to do. If you look at Julian Alvarez, he was bought only a couple of seasons ago by Manchester City for 14 million, I think, or 40, something like that. I can't remember. 14, I'm sure, was the number I saw. But anyway, it wasn't a fee that was really small. It was quite a big fee that people looked at and was like, okay, who's this kid? Let's see what he's about. He came in, he's done really well for 2 years, won everything there is to win in football, and he's been sold for 80 million euros. And that is the perfect example and the exact deal that I guarantee you Chelsea's ownership will be trying to replicate so many times over. So that's what I think we're going to see. Player trading is going to be one of our main ways to generate profit for the business to run. And I think we're going to keep seeing that. So don't expect these small deals to go anywhere for now. I think once they've bought so many players, if they're proving that they're they're harder to sell than they expect, then we might start to see the sort of slowdown of spending money. But what it does mean, and this is absolutely key and important to remember, that every season, I think probably for the next 7 to 10 years, Chelsea will be starting in debt to amortized payments about 200 million every single season, maybe 300 million, because of how many transfers we've made that are being paid off in small amounts to make sure that we're not failing financial fair play and PRS regulations going forward. So it's crazy. It's this really, really, really unbelievable situation that we're seeing. It's so different to what we've seen before. And we're just going to have to give it time and see what happens and see how this develops. But what I will say, and I really want to make this point, is I've been the first to question what these owners are doing. I've been the first person to say the players we're signing aren't good enough. But then I actually watched a recent interview and news sort of bulletin about what Todd Bowley's sort of clear ideas were. And it's quite obviously stated that they're going to have a separate budget to recruit the best young talent in the world for this multi-club ownership or model. And then on the other hand, they're going to have a budget and a wage structure for the best, most elite talent in the world to form a side that is capable of winning. And I think that's what we need to try and remember, is there two separate things here in one club. And that makes it feel a little bit messy. But I've been the first to say that they're doing a really good job on recruiting and hoovering up all this young talent. But that ain't good enough for Chelsea's squad right now to go and win. And they've been messing up on the present and forgetting about how to have success on the football pitch with how they've gone about managers, recruitment, issues there. Well, Pedro Neto, for me, is a massive step in the right direction. A massive step. And if you follow that up over the next month with Osimhen arriving as well, that would be fantastic. But we need to speak about, and as well, Dan Knight makes a really good point here. The rumours is, Israel's saying, sorry, I pressed the wrong one. That literally just came in. Rumours is that Juventus wants Sterling. We kind of alluded to that already, that he could potentially end up there. I think that could happen. And if we got 30 million for Sterling and he only cost us 15 million for what we've had him for that period of time, I think most Chelsea fans would go, do you know what? That's pretty good business again. Don't forget that Arsenal have just sold Emil Smith-Rowe for 30 million to Fulham, and that's sort of bolstered by going to a Premier League club. If an Italian club pays 30 million, that's a sizable fee coming out of an Italian team in a league that just doesn't have money rolling around like the Premier League. I saw this quickly. I just wanted to press it. We have players coming in 2025. Look, we've got some of the best talents in world football rocking up next season as well. Don't forget that. We've signed another winger, obviously, in Pedro Neto, but you've got Esteval Willian and Kendry Pires coming in as well. Those two look fantastic. And I expect them to be part of Chelsea's first team. I don't expect to be seeing them going out on loan. If they do, I'd be quite surprised. Israel says, didn't know you had a channel. Yeah, welcome to the channel, Israel. Reece James, body is finished, bro. I don't think he'll ever hit his prime ever again. At least Gusto's in the team. I think as Chelsea fans, the fact that we're talking about a Reece James hamstring injury again, it's got to worry you a bit. It has to worry you a bit. I'm seeing people say, don't worry, he's suspended. He's suspended. Even if he's suspended, we should have been talking about Reece James exploding into the team 3 games in after the international break, ready to go. The fact that now that might be hampered a bit by a minor hamstring injury when we thought that was behind him, that's a big issue for me. It really is. Indigo says, I think the reality is that we're in for another turbulent season. Hardly any experience left in the first team, on the bench, the manager, the training staff. We can expect a lot of learning pains. Ouch. And you know what? I kind of think that we are going to see a bit of turbulence. But I made the point yesterday that for me, if we look at where we were with Pochettino last season, you do not sack a manager unless you believe he's hindering the club and the playing squad from where they should be and what they should be achieving. Now, I think on a couple of levels, Pochettino was doing that. I think he was misprofiling talent. I think he was struggling to get the best out of the players that were there. And I think he was causing a bit of an issue in training with the training methods and the styles. And obviously, the players couldn't cope with that hence the increase of injuries. The board decided that was an issue. We finished 6th. They must believe that the squad is better than 6th, right? So then that means that the board are going to go, you're gone, Poch. You're causing us too many issues. The playing style isn't going to benefit the assets that we've bought. You're injuring the players because of the way your training methods are. And ultimately, you're misprofiling the talent that we've bought, and you're not doing the best you could do with the talent that's there for you. We know we can do better. We'd like you to go. Obviously, that relationship broke down, and he either got sacked or left before he was pushed. And then they hired Maresca, a player that they've said is perfect for this playing squad. They've given him a 5-year contract to show how much they believe that he's the right person for the job. For me, Chelsea have to improve. Otherwise, they wouldn't have sacked Pochettino. Even if it's a new manager, even if it's this brand new way of playing football, we have to see them change. Glasner had a completely different way of playing football to Roy Hodgson, and look how quickly Palace turned it around. For me, Maresca has to come in. Unproven or not, Maresca's got a lot of knowledge. It's just the experience of how to get that knowledge over to the players that I'd worry about, that he might not have, because he's only been a manager for a season and a half in terms of being the manager of a team, which probably isn't enough to manage a club the size of Chelsea, but he's got the job. Chelsea have to improve. And I've said this already. If Chelsea aren't finishing 5th and above this season, then I think the board have made a mistake. I really do. Chelsea have to improve this season, especially with the fact they've added players, or will potentially add a player like Pedro Neto to the squad. They've added more players to the squad, albeit, yes, some of them questionable. And the fact that we've lost players defensively, for me, is the biggest issue. I'm just not sure that Maresca's capable of getting Chelsea into the top 4 on the evidence that I've seen and the squad that he's got. Because the defence, and we can all admit this, the defence in pre-season has looked awful. Tosin, bang average from what I've seen. On the ball, not that great. Wesley Fofana at Leicester, early days, was phenomenal. Then he broke his leg, and there was a bit of a decline. But then he kind of looked like, by the time he got round to the FA Cup, he'd had a few injuries, but he was going back to the level we wanted to see. Then there's been injuries again. He's barely played for Chelsea for the fee of 80 million. We haven't seen enough from him. And what we've seen in pre-season, he doesn't look quite sharp enough for me. Trevor Chalobah's been banished, probably our best centre-back at the club. But look, Trevor Chalobah, if we're talking about levels here, isn't good enough to be starting for Chelsea as our main centre-back. The level we should be looking at for centre-backs at Chelsea are Thiago Silva's level. They are. That's what we've always had. We've always been blessed with very, very good centre-backs at Chelsea. And like it or not, Levi Colwill hasn't looked that great. Badashile's looked pretty poor. He doesn't care about the ball going into the back of the net like Thiago Silva wanted to stop it. He doesn't care in the same way. Disasi, look, Disasi's a warrior, but his footballing ability, we all know that it's not on the level that it should be. But for me, Disasi probably walks into Manchester United's back line at the moment until they sign De Ligt. But Chelsea need to have a better defence than that. And the 2 centre-backs really worry me. I think left-back, I'm praying Cucurella can keep up the same form. And right-back, I feel confident enough that Reece James and Gusto will get us through, even though I don't believe they'll be fit at the exact same times. However, Gusto's kind of shown how well he can do inverting, and Reece James showed that he didn't look that comfortable inverting. So maybe there's going to be an issue defensively. And goalkeeper-wise, I don't feel confident with Sanchez or Jorgensen. I don't know how you guys feel. Yeah, look, I kind of believe this at the moment, but I'm genuinely concerned about Chelsea's defence this season. I think that might be, right now, without additional recruitment, the reason Chelsea's squad and first 11 isn't capable of getting Champions League football. So for me, I think a 1-position improvement is what Chelsea should be looking at. And I'm trying to be really realistic there and positive. I know people say I'm negative, but if we've got a defence leaking goals like it's done in pre-season come the first 5 games of the Premier League, I don't see us getting top 4. I really don't. And if we don't recruit an extra centre-back of way better quality going into that game, then I think there's going into, after the transfer window closes, if we haven't added a centre-back of a higher level of quality than what we've already got, I think Chelsea will have that issue up until January if they decide to recruit then, and if not, the end of the season. So for me, something needs to happen. I think the board want to give a chance to these centre-backs that they've brought in to blossom, but they've kind of had a few chances. Wesley Fofana's had chances. And I actually believe if Wesley Fofana was able to put some games together, I think the board would look at selling him, because I think for the money that they've paid, he's in a very similar boat to Raheem Sterling. He cost £80 million, actually double what Raheem Sterling did. He hasn't looked good enough, and he's not been able to maintain fitness, and he's on big wages. I've heard he's on 200 grand a week. So that doesn't fit this new wage structure. And I wonder whether the board are looking at it going, the way we did things when we first come in, we were desperate and we acted in a way to just try and improve the squad and keep it going in the same way. And actually, this hasn't worked. But anyway, I'm kind of wanting to give these defenders time. I think the board are probably wanting to do the same in the hope that they blossom and become this new unreal sort of centre-back pairing develops out of nowhere right now. But that's a risky game to play. But like we've already seen, this ownership and this manager as well, they don't mind taking risks. And we need to talk about that, because really, really important as well. Maresca, the way I was listening to Mark Albrighton talk about it, and it's all about his defenders willing to take risks. Sometimes they'll go man for man in a rest defense of like 5, and as soon as their players sort of moving around the pitch, they'll follow sometimes at Leicester, and overloads will happen, but the defenders have to back themselves. And Maresca's basically said he doesn't want to play this high line, because I don't think he's set on this rigid high line. He's more set about making sure that the players that are capable of attacking and causing Chelsea problems are being monitored, and people are made aware that that's where those are the danger areas, and you need to pick up those players and back yourself in the one-on-one battle. Players like Wesley Fofana, who are blessed with pace, fine. Players like Reece James on his day, fine. I back them to do that. The unfortunate thing is Reece James could get injured because he can't trust his hamstring. The same with Fofana. Badashine, I don't actually think he's good enough to do that. Dazassi, I back him to win his battle physically, but I'd worry about him against the quicker players, and I'd worry against him in terms of ability on the ball. I just worry about some of these players. Levi Colwell, he got turned inside out in some of the games in pre-season. On the ball, he's really not looked that comfortable. Show me where I'm supposed to believe that this group of defenders we have is good enough. I think removing our 2 best defenders of last season in Chalobah and Thiago Silva without the recruitment on that area could be disastrous. It could be really, really bad. And I believe that the board might be moving in silence on that area. But is there room to add another centre-back into this squad? Yes, probably, if Chalobah leaves. If Chalobah leaves, I then believe we might see the additional recruitment of a centre-back, because we replaced Thiago Silva straight away with Tosin. Straight away. Not saying he's as good, but numbers-wise in the squad, 1 for 1. One centre-back leaves, in comes another. And I kind of hope that the board are sort of thinking the same. Do they know Raheem Sterling's got like a really good offer on the table from Juventus, and they were like, we're going to make 30 million here. Let's go and get Neto. I will praise them, by the way. I love the way they went about that deal. Under the radar. Chelsea everyone was talking about Tottenham and Arsenal getting Pedro Neto. Chelsea just snuck in under the radar. No one knew. And then, you know what? A journalist who I very rarely see popping up on my timeline drops an exclusive that we're getting Pedro Neto. Unreal. That is what you want to see. Colwell gets cooked way too often. From what I've seen, I'd have to agree with this. I also agree with this. I think Enzo's trying to do that pretty drastically, but he hasn't been able to do it yet because of apparent old habits. I don't believe that's just Poch, by the way. I think Tuchel played a high line. I think Potter played a high line. I think that is inbuilt in this defense, because they were being led by Thiago Silva, who was used to playing a high line because of his pace. He backed himself on the recovery runs. Now, I think Maresca don't like that. They've got to work. I think there's a lot of work to be done in so many different areas. Mark Albrighton literally said, Maresca plays football in such a different way to what he or wants his team to play football in, and understand it and view it in such a drastically different way to anywhere he's ever seen. And Mark Albrighton's like, he's been about in terms of his career and worked with so many different managers, played so many games. I think they were shocked. And I think, yes, we've got a young, impressionable group, but this is still new to them. And this is where I think we all knew it could take time this season. I think it's going to take more time than anyone expected. But I still believe that ultimately Maresca's got this system in place to win games of football. Even if it's taking time, he's still got to be achieving similar or better than what Pochettino did last season. Otherwise, I don't understand why you would take the risk and pay off Poch like they had to and remove him and put this manager on a 5-year deal if he's not going to improve the squad. He needs to do it. We'll go through the comments just quickly as well. We'll probably go for Marilla. Do you know what, right? Luke, we played for us, didn't we, away? And towards the end of last season, Murillo was unreal. And if we got Murillo in, I'd be pretty happy with that. I don't know where he is age-wise. I'm not 100% sure. My guess would be he's 25-ish. But as a defender, he just wants to kick and head everything. And he's body on the line defending, sometimes like we saw Thiago Silva. But then, on the ball, he's really confident. And I think he's maybe this season, if he stays at Forest, he's going to score a worldie. I think he's got it in his locker. He's 21. Oh, my gosh. Look, all right, he's young, but he's on a better level. He is. He's definitely on a better level. Neto's probably got to get 7, hasn't he? Is Raheem Sterling 7? Is Raheem Sterling 7? I'm just trying to think. If Raheem Sterling leaves, Neto will take the 7, won't he? Besides our best defenders leaving, remember they also selling our best goal for last season. Yeah, but look, we need to be honest about Petrovic, right? Petrovic, he's not that good. He's okay. But he's not great. And when I remember Petr Cech did a bit, and you could probably find it on YouTube, Petr Cech did a bit of analysis on Petrovic, talking about how he wasn't getting anywhere near some of the shots he should have been getting near, and his positioning and certain things in his game. And I never looked at Petrovic the same. I kind of felt like, hang on a minute, Petr Cech is Chelsea's standard of goalkeeper. 15 goals conceded in the season. That's the best we're ever going to see in goal at Chelsea, by the way. But we need to be getting as close to what this guy's saying as possible. And Petrovic is miles away from it. Sanchez, I actually think Sanchez, in a way, has some attributes better than Petrovic. But I think the risk that Sanchez takes, I can't deal with. I don't want that from my keeper. And I think that's why there's going to be a bit of an issue there for me forever if Sanchez, Jorgensen are our goalkeepers. I really do think that, because I don't think I've seen enough from either. I actually sat there and looked at all of Jorgensen's clips. Every single one. I used up my whole Y-Scout quota. And he doesn't look unreal. And the fact that he got dribbled round loads in that first game, like I was chatting to Tom Little earlier on the Rational League yesterday, I think, that is not a stat you want to see. Your goalkeeper being dribbled round 3 times in a game. Petrovic, I think Petrovic got overhyped because of how poor Sanchez looked at times. And I think he just did a good goalkeeper's job. You know, he just did a good job and did the right job of what a goalkeeper should be doing. No messing about with the ball at his feet, trying to save and stop the ball from going in the back of the net. And that was it. It was the basics. And he was doing them okay. And we were like, oh, yeah, this is what a goalkeeper should do. And then we see Sanchez come in, and it's these wacky moments in possession and run at that moment against Brentford with Neil Maupay. Like, that's not what I want to see. And I think that's why Petrovic got overhyped. But Petr Cech showed him up. Who's going to be captain for the City game? Well, rumour has it, and whether or not he'll start or not, I'm not sure. I think we're going to see a much better idea tomorrow. Rumour has it Enzo Fernandez is going to be one of the vice captains, him and Chilwell. I'm not sure they figured out where Ben Chilwell plays in this team. And I think that's going to be an issue for Maresca to figure out. I think they look at Ben Chilwell and don't know where he fits in. Because for me, Ben Chilwell is either a left wing back or a left back. He's not a left winger. He's not this inverted type of player. He's just a traditional type of left back on the Luke Shaw type of level in terms of how they play football, right? And we've seen Chilwell do really well for Chelsea as a left wing back. That's gone. And if I was Ben Chilwell, if there was a team out there that was looking for a left back, Man United, or Liverpool, or a team that were looking for a left wing back somewhere out in Italy, Napoli, I think I'd be speaking to my agent and I'd say, can you get me a move? Because I genuinely think Ben Chilwell, similar to Conor Gallagher, he's not going to fit into this new system. The one thing I'll say about Ben Chilwell, though, I think Ben's really, really good around the dressing room. I think he is one of those players that we lack in terms of seniority. Ben Chilwell now knows he's a senior player, and he talks about wanting to help the pros. And this is another thing we underestimate Raheem Sterling for. Every single new player that comes in talks about the impact Raheem Sterling's had. Because they as a kid, Raheem Sterling was at the top of the game. We're talking about Raheem Sterling being linked with Real Madrid, balling out for Manchester City. They look at Raheem Sterling and go, oh my God, that's Raheem Sterling, you know? And oh, that's Ben Chilwell. He won the Champions League when I was like 12. And these are the type of guys that you want to have in the dressing room and look up to. And I feel like that's one thing as fans, because of their lack of ability on the pitch. All right, I don't disagree. Ability comes first and performances come first, for sure. But we do underestimate that. And to lose more experience in the dressing room, that concerns me a lot. And if you lost Ben Chilwell and Raheem Sterling in the same window as losing Thiago Silva and Trevor Chalobah, our experience list starts to look really, really ropey. And I actually think at times Ben Chilwell's okay. But sometimes I will get to this. Absolute nonsense that Egbali became a billionaire from taking high-risk bets. He's a money manager and simply manages other people's money. He's actually a hedge fund manager, and they put other people's money into high-risk investments, such as crypto and other investments like that, and football clubs, and make huge turn around in profit. That's probably not the right word to use, but huge profits. Their margins are unbelievably good. And I was listening to a guy who's the owner of Peterborough United talking about how good and what they've done and the risks that they take in different markets to generate that type of money. He's not just a money manager. He's not a bank manager. He's a billionaire. You don't become a billionaire by being a bank manager, managing people's money and looking after it and living off the interest. That's not what happens. They're taking the risks and they earn money because of that reason. And then they give people their money back with a huge amount of profit on top. Go and look at what Cleargate Capital invest in. They are in crypto and all sorts of high volatility markets to generate money. And they do a very, very good job of it. A very good job. Their track record in sports is the LA Dodgers, yes, but I'm talking on a financial standpoint here. And LA Dodgers isn't failed, by the way. A lot of people think the LA Dodgers are okay and they're running in a way that is actually a good level of maintenance. However, I know that isn't what we want as Chelsea fans. We expect a trophy every season like we did under Roman. I don't disagree. Cuckoo is clear event. Yeah, no doubt about it for me. Cucurella, last season, this Euros has definitely showed that. Name your best 11 as it stands with everyone fit. And I saw a review on Felipe Jorgensen. They said he still has to improve his left side when saving. Yeah, there's a few things that Jorgensen has to improve on. Definitely. He's young. He should do. What's he played? One full season at Villarreal? Definitely has to. This I will do, Neil, but I think I'll do it after the Inter Milan game. You know, going into that Man City game, and get a real look at what Maresca thinks he's going to do, then I'd probably feel confident enough to sit here and name the best 11 in Maresca's system. Because I actually saw Gabriel Marcotti name Chelsea's potential starting 11. He's done it in a 4-2-3-1. It's all over the place. And I was like, hang on, that's not our best 11 in this system. And I don't think it will be. And I think we need to see if Pedro Neto gets announced, because for me, Pedro Neto walks in. But when you actually start to think about what we could have going forwards, the fact that you could have Pedro Neto and Kunku Cole Palmer, and potentially it's either Jackson or we haven't seen much of Jackson in this Maresca setup, or potentially you sign a player in the likes or the ilk of Osimhen. It starts to look pretty healthy going forward. Then you've got Casado, who I thought at times looked really good last year. Like really, really good. Yes, I agree. I don't think he's lived up to his price tag, but I think there were times when he looked really good. I think sometimes he's asked to do things and he gets misprofiled from managers in what he actually is as a player. I think you've got Reece James at right back, who could be exceptional. You've got Malo Gusto, who for me, if he played in his inverted left back, I wouldn't even care. I think he's been unreal. My biggest worry is our central defenders and our goalkeeper. I think Lavia's looked really good. I think Dewsbury Hall looks like a good addition. I don't know if he'll start. I think Enzo Fernandez, there's still a player to be unlocked there. I don't think we've seen the best of him in a Chelsea shirt. I really don't think that. And I pray that we unlock him. I think there's some really, really good young players on the bench as well. I look at Chelsea's team and I think, okay, this is all right, but there's huge question marks over way too many of them. There's way too many question marks over enough of these players' fitness. Lavia, Reece James, we've already done it, talking about fitness. And Kunku, are these players going? If they can stay fit, I think they can be really good. What's the chances of them staying fit, right? Then you go and switch it the other way. You've got these players that have cost a lot of money, but they haven't been good enough yet. And just because they cost a lot of money, don't use that as like a judgment on how good they are. If you watch the game of football and Enzo Fernandez doesn't do anything, he's had a bad game. It doesn't matter that it cost 100 million. It doesn't matter that he was a good player once. He's had a bad game. Raheem Sterling's had a bad game. He was a good player once. Same with Ben Chilwell. He's won the Champions League. Now he can't even get in the England squad because he's not playing well. Do the eye test. Look at the game and go, do you know what? This player's not doing enough. It doesn't matter that they cost 100 million. Lavia cost a lot of money. He's not played a competitive game for Chelsea bar than like half an hour. How can you can't guarantee that he's going to be unbelievable for Chelsea until you start to see it with your own eyes. From what I've seen in pre-season, though, really promising. I just hope he can stay fit. And I'm not being pessimistic here. I'm just telling you the facts. You can't start to judge players and talk about what we might be able to achieve and how good our starting 11 looks until we start to see these players putting up guaranteed performances. And I think that's the thing. And I'm going to go on to Conor Gallagher again here, but that's what Chelsea fans like. They knew what Conor Gallagher they were getting every single game, and they knew he was fit every single game. And Chelsea fans like that. And football fans like that. They like to know what they're getting. They like to know what they're in for, and they can build up a relationship of trust with that player. Every week, they know what they're going to get. Conor Gallagher's on that pitch. He's going to work hard for me. He's going to try and win tackles. He ain't going to score a goal. He might, but he'll probably pick up a yellow card. And you just knew you were getting that from Conor Gallagher. Cole Palmer, we knew every single week, as soon as we saw him last year, this boy's special. There's a bit of magic about him. Then he went on to score the amount of goals that he did, and it was like every week we knew Cole Palmer might be the guy to bail us out. Nkunku, I can safely say that we're looking at a guy that's an elite finisher here, but we don't know if he's going to play more than 10 games this season off of his previous track record. Wesley Fofana, we all know how good he was at Leicester if you watched him, but we don't know if he's going to play. Reece James, we know he is capable of being the best player in Chelsea's team. The best player. We know he has that ability, but we don't know if we're going to see Reece James on the pitch for more than 15 games, 10 games in a season. You know, and that's the issue. We know Lavia could probably be an unbelievable holding midfielder for us, but we probably won't see him unless there are drastic changes to history that's already happened, right? And how that looks moving forward. But we're already talking about Reece James having the same sort of injury again. So it's hard to go, oh yeah, Reece James could be amazing, when the fact of the matter is, whether he's suspended or not, he's got this injury niggling him again still. And I think for as long as Reece James plays football, with his body type, he will always struggle because he's so physical and he's so explosive at the same time. I think that is just a recipe for disaster in high intensity like sports and leagues. And I think that's why someone like Ruben Loftus-Cheek struggled as well, because he was an absolute physical specimen. He was so explosive, so quick at a young age, able to move so sharply, move like he was 5'10", and he was 6'6". Now he's gone out to Italy and he's being treated right and he's being cared for and he's in some of the best medical, well, Milan is renowned for its doctors in sport and things like that, he's actually coping and he looks good again. And maybe Reece's future just isn't at Chelsea and in the Premier League. If he's going to keep getting injuries, he needs to preserve himself first. And like he said at the beginning of this season, he just wants to be on the pitch. Dan Knight says, if we start badly, it'll be toxic and the fan base will boo. Who are you blaming if things go wrong for Enzo Maresca, ownership and the sporting director? My first and 100% blame will be on the sporting directors, because I believe that, and yes, by the way, if we do start badly and we get battered by City 4-0 and we lose to Inter Milan tomorrow in pre-season, right, and the heads have already dropped, and then we lose a couple of games coming up, there's going to be issues, right? I think people are going to start to moan and there'll be murmurs. And that's it's not exactly what happened with Sarri, but people got bored very quickly. And it was evident that there wasn't much success coming. And it switched and it was toxic. And they were singing F Sarri ball and the fans were done. And they made it very, very clear, like they did with Pochettino at Brentford as well. The fans aren't going to stand for their club being messed around like a toy. And like this point here, we don't want Chelsea to be run like that. I 100% agree, by the way. I'm just telling you the facts. I don't want Chelsea to be run like that. I want to see Chelsea run in a way that means that on average, for the next 20 years, we win a trophy every season again. Because I believe Chelsea's capable of doing that. And I believe that every single fan at Chelsea knows full well that we are a club that has the structure and that mentality inbuilt in the fan base now, but it's being removed from everywhere else. But they are fiddling with this club and they are meddling with it and they are trying this new approach. But the Chelsea fans won't be patient for it if results and trophies don't return very quickly. But if you look at it, first year, absolutely rubbish, finished 12th. The second year, couple of really good cup runs, finished 6th. It is an improvement. What this year, if they've got it right, we improve again. They got it right last year in a way. All right, it wasn't the improvement that we all wanted to see. We wanted top 4 and a trophy back at like we all knew that was what we wanted. But they did improve. It could have got worse. They could have stayed the same. They improved. Can they do it again? That's why I'm trying to aim 5th, make sure we improve, and please try and win a trophy. But I do understand that we are implementing this brand new approach of football to the majority of players in this squad, and it could take a while. But by the end of the season, I expect us to be in full flow with how we're playing. Anyone that blames the sporting directors is coming from the owners. No, right. We need to talk about this because this is really important. The sporting directors are 100% at fault here if Maresca doesn't work out. Because I believe that the owners have given the sporting directors a lot of power. They've placed their trust as people that are uneducated about football, Bowley and Egbali and whoever else is part of Clear Lake. They've placed their footballing knowledge and trust in the sporting directors, right? They're going to be educated by the sporting directors, and the sporting directors are allowed to use their money to bring in the type of players to fit the model and the system that the board probably kind of want to implement because of what the sporting directors have told them. The sporting directors are completely 100% in charge of footballing the day-to-day footballing recruitment and structure at Chelsea Football Club with Stanley and Stewart. There's no doubt about that because Egbali doesn't even know more than 2 years of European football. Like, he's got no more experience than that. The same with Todd Bowley. They just don't. Football wasn't massive until isn't even massive now in the States. And pre-COVID, it wasn't even on the charts. So maximum they've been aware of the Premier League is like 4 years. It wasn't until they started seeing the numbers financially that they probably started taking a look at it, going, oh, there's money to be made there. They got the NFL and the NBA and these sports have this many fans and it makes this much. And I remember Todd Bowley saying it. He was like, football has 2 billion fans and it only makes half of what the NBA does. We need to start making stuff happen. And that is obviously why they're buying into football clubs. Anyway, they have placed their absolute trust in the sporting directors. The sporting directors are the ones that have told them that Pochettino's doing something wrong. The sporting directors are the ones that told them the players that they need to put their money into and sign. Yes, you might say they're glorified scouts, but they have a whole scouting team set up as well. They brought in the guy from Brighton. They've brought in another guy, I think, from Brighton, Sam Jewell. They brought in another guy who was a recruitment specialist. Like, they've brought in quite a few people that aren't sporting directors that will be relaying this information, but the sporting directors, the ones putting that team together, I can guarantee you that they're the ones hiring the manager. They're the ones buying all these young players. They're the ones deciding if players are good enough, if we need experience. They're the ones deciding that, not the owners. The owners don't know. They don't know about football. And if Maresca doesn't work out, it is 100% on them, because they're the ones that would have interviewed him and would have gone to the board and said, look, you need to meet this guy. We think he should be the new manager. And yes, the final fault falls onto the owners. I do not disagree. But if the sporting directors get this one wrong, that's 4 managerial recruitments that they would have got wrong. And that's when they need to be removed from their post, because the board have backed them with a lot of money. And they've decided that the way to go about it was this way, and they fit into the model and they're yes men. But if it's not working, they're the ones whose heads need to roll. And then if the owners get it wrong again, that's when we start to go, hang on a minute, look, we know you didn't know much. We gave you a chance, but this is too far. And look, let's have a look at it. Let's see what people are saying in the comments. Bowley definitely had a different attitude, didn't he? He went after players that were of a caliber in Sterling, in Fofana, in Koulibaly, in Cucurella, who just won what he won at Brighton as player of the season. He definitely went after players who had a better stature in world football and a reputation and experience. It kind of looked more normal to what Chelsea were doing already, you know. But then, obviously, he stepped back, brought in these guys, and they're like, "Now we need to do it this way. We need to sign the youngsters, because that's what we know. We've done it in Monaco. We've done it in the Red Bull model. We've done it at Brighton. This is how we need to work if you want to be like those clubs." And I think Chelsea are. I think Chelsea are trying to be a mixture between buying players that Brighton would buy, buying players that maybe like Aston Villa or players further down the pecking order, clubs further down the pecking order would buy, being in the market for those type of players, like Aston Villa getting ahead of the curve on like a John Duran, like Brighton getting ahead of the curve on most of their playing squad. Chelsea are trying to do that, as well as still trying to be a big club and signing players like Pedro Neto. And I think they're trying to do 2 things at once, and it's whether or not they can make that work or not. And I don't know if the sporting directors are cut out for that. Maybe they should have one sporting director for that side of it, like youth recruitment, and they should have another sporting director that is set up for elite level recruitment and playing squad and management, and then blend the 2 together. And look, maybe that's what's happening. But for me, Stuart and Whit-Stanley, it doesn't look like that's happening. And we 100% have to see, hang on, I've never served a yeah, exactly, right? It is on Eghbali, but Eghbali's put them in that position. And if they're in that position and they're not capable of doing their job, then they've got to go. They've got to go. You know, Eghbali's not going anywhere. Eghbali can make a mistake, yes. But if his whole trust and football and education is being made of Stuart and Whit-Stanley, and then all of a sudden he's not making money, they will go eventually. Like Lewis will be blaming Enzo Maresca, and should be blaming sporting director at ownership. Look, 2 things can be right at once. It's really important to remember this. If Maresca's playing squad and tactics and that whole side of things isn't good, and it's obvious that he could do a bit more to improve the situation, then it's his fault, right? If Maresca's doing everything right and we're playing really good football and we should be winning games, but our players just aren't good enough, that's down to the sporting directors, right? If Maresca's crap and he's not very good, that's down to the sporting directors, right? Then, if they continue to be allowed to make mistakes, keep hiring players that aren't good enough, keep hiring managers that aren't good enough, then that is down to the owners not removing them quick enough. That's what it will be. But a few things can be right. The sporting directors can be doing a bad job at the same time a manager can be doing a bad job. The sporting directors could be doing a good job at the same time a manager's doing a bad job, and vice versa. You know, the sporting directors, in the eyes of the owners right now, are doing an okay job. I bet they're thinking, why have we needed 4 managers? But they're probably thinking, okay, you're doing a good job. Pochettino, we all thought he was the right guy. He obviously wasn't. We'll give you another chance. But if Maresca comes in and then he's not the right guy, he'll be removed. And I guarantee the board start to go, with Stanley, Stewart, what's going on here? Like, this is the 4th. We're going to be on our 5th manager under you guys. Why are we not getting this right? Like, what's happening here? And then that's what will happen. I know it's confusing. Roman appointed Peter Kenyon, and Barley wants to look. Roman hired Peter Kenyon in terms of, I think, as a CEO of Chelsea. He weren't in as sporting director, by the way. I'm pretty sure about that. I think one of our first sporting directors was Avram Grant, I think. And then we had we had Michael Lemonano. And then I think we had Marina. I think, and like Petr Cech was involved as like a technical director, wasn't he? At the end of the Roman ownership. Yeah, the sporting directors are inexperienced managers. Yeah, exactly, Bobby. It ends. No, you know what? It ends in 2 ways. It does end in 2 ways. It ends in they either all stick together, stick to the plan, and it works out unbelievably well. And all these young players blossom, and it all works out. And they gain their experience on the job of being inexperienced, but they all had good knowledge, right? And which is how I've spoken about Maresca. I believe Maresca's got a lot of knowledge. He's just inexperienced. However, when you put all this inexperience together without real strong experience guidance, that's when it can blow up in their faces. And I think Chelsea are at risk right now. And this is where we're talking about the risk taking. If it doesn't work out, it is going to be a monumental cleanup job. It really is. We're going to have players coming out of our ears. We're going to have a squad that isn't winning things, isn't capable of winning things. We're going to have people in place that aren't able to do jobs correctly. And it's going to be a really unattractive club to buy because of the mess that it's in. Where before, it was a really attractive club to buy because although it was in a mess behind the scenes in terms of the owner and what was going on in the world, this was a football club that was perfect. It was winning trophies every single year. It was 2 years off of winning a Champions League. Had one of the best managers in the world at the time, albeit, yeah, he's been on the decline probably since, but he's still won a league since, still got to finals since. So, yeah, it's a real strange one. I don't think the blueprint needed to be torn up in the way that it has. I just don't think it did. But obviously they want to put their stamp on things, and it's really going to be see where we are in 5 years, see where we are in 10. I'll tell you what, they've been here in the grand scheme of things. They've been here, I was going to say 2 minutes. They've been a little bit longer than that. They've been here 5 minutes, right? We 5 minutes, an hour in the grand scheme of things. They've got a lot of time left in terms of how long they're going to own the club for. They're right at the beginning in terms of these players that they've hired. They're still all pretty young. Like, the real time to judge them is like 5 years and go, hang on, what have they done in 5 years? From where the club was, are we any better off in 5 years, you know? And I know that's annoying. And in that 5 years, there should be some success to measure it on. That's what I believe. But 10 years down the line, I hope we can sit here and go, we were all just really impatient because we were blessed with what we had with Roman. But to be honest, I think we can all see the mistakes are being made, and it just sometimes it takes too long. That's what's worrying. I know it gets a bit confusing when we talk about all this stuff because it's just all over the place, but that is the realistic take. That's just what Chelsea is right now. You know, it's not me. That's just the facts. Chelsea's a mess. The fan base is split. I reckon the playing staff are split. It's a mess. And I've been saying this, it just needs some stability. Stop buying players, stop hiring and firing managers, and just give it a chance to start moving in the direction that this plan is probably set out to be. I agree. Tosin, I think he looks bang average. 26 or not, I think looks bang average. When we look over where we were champions of Europe and the world and finished third, yeah, look, we've fallen massively. But it's not like there weren't issues. There were some, but they were really easily rectified, in my opinion. So it is what it is. But look, guys, it's been a fantastic stream. I've loved returning. We've got Inter Milan tomorrow. Fingers crossed Maresca can make something happen. Lives are going to be coming onto the channel way more often. I kind of want to start doing them daily, if I'm being completely honest with you. I kind of made a promise to Judge Mo that I would. So if you're liking the content and you haven't visited the channel before, make sure to subscribe. Drop a like on the video. If we can get 15 likes, I think that would be great because it's been a while since I've had a live on here. So I'm trying to be realistic with that. I know not everyone's always going to agree with me. I'm just going to say it how I see it. That's what I do. Sometimes people don't like that. People say I'm anti-Chelsea and I'm pessimistic, but that's not the case. I love Chelsea to pieces. I've been a fan of them for as long as I can remember. It's all I've known, and all I want is Chelsea to win and be successful. That is all I want, and I hope we can agree on that. And sometimes we'll get round to that point with different opinions. But I'll catch you in a bit. Pleasure streaming. Pleasure chatting to all of you guys. I'm getting the hang of it, getting the hang of bringing up the comments and things like that and interacting with you. I don't know how you guys feel about it. I might start opening up the lines. I might start trying to get some people on and chatting because I can sit here and chat for hours, but I do like speaking to people in person, or not in person as such, but, you know, online, and getting you guys on and tell me your thoughts and all that kind of thing. I think that'd be something that could be really fun to do. I'm going to start bringing some non-Chelsea stuff to the channel, mainly Chelsea, of course, but I want to talk about the footballing side of things across the board because I do anyway. If you've got any ideas and things you want to see, let me know. Pleasure chatting to you as always, and I'll speak to you in a bit.